Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The 100. A great episode. A lot of interesting things went down this episode, so let's break everything down bit by bit. Obviously, this episode pushes forward the strain between Octavia and everybody, because no one likes the way Octavia is kind of running things. Like, the fact of the matter is, like the way she was talking about Echo, and obviously her and Bellamy aren't in a good place. It's actually kind of interesting because really quickly it kind of comes up. It's like, right, Indra and Bellamy kind of aren't necessarily the best place too, because they were kind of at odds too. But I'm sure Indra always kind of like let that slide a little bit after, what Bellamy did during season 3 was mainly for Octavia's sake. So it's interesting because I didn't even think about that until they brought it up, because it's like, yeah, she's being super defensive of like Bellamy, because it's like, oh, she's talking about Echo. It's like, oh, maybe we can't trust her. But it's like, oh, like your brother trusts her, so that should be good enough for you, so. But we end up finding out, like, kind of seeing more and more the limits of what Octavia is willing to do. It seems she brought back some of those worms, and she's actually putting them into people's bodies so they multiply. Dead people, granted, she didn't know that, Kara was using live people, like one of the people was live. I mean, who's to say other people weren't alive during this situation, but it like gave her the result, because basically she's trying to weaponize that. Like that's what Clark and Monty ended up finding out about. And Indra wasn't all about that idea, because it's like, yeah, it makes sense tactically, but also for Indra, it's like, you didn't talk to me. I'm supposed to be, your like the leader of your army and everything, is what like Octavia says. Like, yeah, she's like, yeah, I didn't sign off on the whole like human experiments, but hey, the fact of the matter is it gets results. This is a war. We have to make compromises, because she ends up talking about the fact that, because like Bellamy and Clark are trying to stop her, but she's like, what about all the sacrifices you've made in the past? I mean, I think the argument you can make about that situation, in my opinion, maybe that's not how they necessarily would frame it, but it's like, they have made their mistakes in their past. They don't want you to literally follow in their footsteps. They regret the stuff that they've made, like the hard decisions. You've seen how much that hurt them. But at the same time, maybe Octavia feels like she can do whatever. She can handle it. She's hardened herself in this past 6 years to become who she is. So like whatever sacrifices need, because she's like, oh, you did what you needed to do, save your people. I'm doing the same thing with this war. Like, even if I have to kill everyone there, I don't want it to kill your friends. Like, even Echo, I don't like her, but she's obviously important to you, brother, so I don't want to do that. But there are sacrifices, there are acceptable losses in this situation, which is just sad that she has that outlook. I mean, because that's the most heartbreaking thing about this situation for both of them, because yes, Octavia's done stuff in the past, but she's never been this cruel about things. Like I said, it's just like she took what Jaha said and she kind of ran with it, and she kind of steeped herself. And it's kind of something Indra talks about, like losing yourself in the darkness. Like she kind of got so swept up in that for the past 6 years, it's kind of hard to kind of see her way out. There's probably potentially no going back to being the Octavia that she once was. It's kind of what's kind of being hinted at there. And so I'm curious to see, I mean, can she ever come back from it? I'm curious, will they, like, it seemed like they're probably hinting at trying, because to me, like, ultimately, like, I'm skipping around here and stuff, but it's the whole Maddie situation. Clark told her not to stand out. The same thing was said by even Guy, because Guy's like, no, that was good advice, because I want you to live. It's like, yes, I'm going to serve Octavia wholeheartedly, but I'm not going to forget where I stand as, like, the flame protector and stuff. It's like, those are my beliefs, and you are the next potential commander. And like I promised Clark, I'd never force this upon you. But it does seem like on some level, like it automatically calls out to like the night blood in her, because she starts going closer and you almost hear whispers, and it's just kind of, she's kind of getting sucked in by it. So it might not be 100% Maddie's choice. It might just be her destiny or fate, and just be, especially where everything's going, but I'll kind of get to that later on. But it's like, it just might be more than just her consciously being like, no, I don't want to do it. But the fact is, when the time came, Gaia and Clark told her not to show off, but she did. She kind of revealed herself, and Octavia's like, oh, give her a real sword, give her armor. You're going to be my second in command, for this situation, because you'll tell me all I need to know about the Shallow Valley. My question going forward is like, why would she do that? Clark and both Gaia have told her not to do that. Because I think in the long run, when it's all said and done, potentially when Octavia's reign is over, Guy is going to be there to be like, okay, we have a commander. I never, like, I had given up hope, but now look, you're here. I still have the flame, like, passing it on to the next commander. Maybe she feels like given enough time when Octavia's reign is over for whatever happens. Like, it's not like she's hoping it, like I said, she's serving Octavia wholeheartedly, but the fact of the matter is when the time comes, she's ready to kind of pass this on to Maddie to become the next commander when she's ready. Because I think she feels like no matter what, Maddie might not be for it, but eventually Maddie's going to rise to it like every other commander before her has. So. But I'm guessing, and maybe this is completely wrong, but why Maddie would do that? Maybe, like, I'll think maybe in some way it's about inadvertently protecting Clark so that Clark doesn't have to worry about her anymore. It's like, no, I can protect myself. But there's also a part of me that wonders if it's because, unlike Clark and Gaia, she has faith in Octavia. That the fact of the matter is, after hearing all those stories about Octavia, even though Octavia's a little differently, maybe she can look in Octavia's eyes and see what the dealers that even Bellamy isn't able to see, that she's still in there. And so maybe that's what this is all about. Maybe Maddie kind of believes that she can be the one to save Octavia. Or maybe this is some long con that basically the night blood in her is kicking in and she wants to rule and she's planning to kill Octavia the moment she gets a chance. Like I said, it's kind of interesting considering that's kind of where the story's going, because in at least like when it comes to Charmaine, she's only going to accept everything if we can get, like, if they completely surrender. That's the only way they can coexist in Shallow Valley. So they have to knock her off her throne, Octavia, because they do have someone else to fill that void. Like the moment it becomes public, like, oh man, I mean, would one crew be willing to accept her as a commander, even though they've kind of becoming where they are? I'd assume that they would, but I don't know. Because to them, like, everyone in one crew might be so loyal to Octavia. I mean, it's a combination of probably more so fear rather than loyalty, which I guess the argument could be made fear brings forth loyalty, desperation and fear, so. But, I mean, I'm curious to see what that means going forward, because, like, Octavia doesn't really have too many. I mean, she has, like, her loyal people, but once again, it's like that was out of fear and just kind of being kind of ruthless that kind of led to them, like, serving her. And even the one person that's on her side isn't, like, she's not listening to Indra, because she's like, oh, yeah, you let Cain go. But for her, it's like, yeah, but I'd do it again because I'd do anything to save you from yourself. Because I think maybe she feels like if Octavia did that, she'd be like killing one of the only good allies they had at the time and stuff like that. But also it's because you would regret it later on. It would eat you up. Like Cain kind of serves as a consciousness for like all that they're doing. Like he's kind of tried to always lead things the right way, and it's like killing him would just be a big mistake because he's a friend. He's always been an ally. But also maybe that is just simply it, because it's like Octavia might not feel it now because of where she is, but eventually down the road, Cain would be a soul that she killed that would just weigh on her heavier than she, obviously right now she thinks she can handle, but maybe in the future, maybe at some point in time, it would finally hit her and it kind of break her. I don't know. That could be Indra's thought process behind it. So. Because what also comes up in this, and I thought was kind of interesting, was a letter that Clark gives to Monty from Jasper. Turns out it's something he wrote like right after the events of season 3. Basically, he was going to kill himself pretty soon after like shutting down the City of Light. For him, it's just kind of like, oh, we humans are terrible and stuff like that. Kind of being along the same. I feel like he never really outright said any of that stuff, even in season 4. But I guess it's more so just obviously that was him probably at his worst, because that's him coming off the City of Light, like feeling everything again. So obviously, like all those emotions probably rushed. He was already in a bad place before the City of Light, but now it just kind of like it escalated even more so because all those emotions were kind of hitting him all at once. The reality was kind of sinking in again. So I think, so basically in his mind, it's like, oh, like all the terrible stuff that we've done, like, it's like, oh, none of this will be over until until we're no longer here. That's when everything will be fine. And even Monty's kind of thinking like that. It's like, because for him, it's like, we are literally making the same mistakes over and over again. What are we doing now? We're fighting. We're getting caught up in another war. It's just kind of like an endless cycle that we keep rinse and repeat. It's just like, when will it stop? When the fighting ever stop? And so that kind of is what bugging him. But it's interesting because Monty does suggest like the algae, because like this is all about their like that system for making them food and stuff like that for their survival. Like that's why they need a shallow valley, just because it's the last sustainable land. But it's like if he can make that algae work for them, then it won't be the only thing that'll be able to sustain. Like the shallow valley won't be the only sustainable area. It could be like, oh, the algae could be used to sustain one crew. It's kind of what he's suggesting. But I mean, who knows if that's something. I mean, it seems like that's them setting that up. That could potentially be set up to be like, oh, be the thing that could help end all of this. Because it's like, yeah, like, oh, we put our friends first and everything else, but it's kind of like, are we really right in that situation? Just going like, because for Bellamy, it's like, we got to save our friends first. Then we can worry about stopping this war and stuff like that. So, but then again, things are kind of changing because of the whole situation with Clark. She kind of removes, I mean, obviously, again, I'm skipping around, but like the whole like removing an eagle eye. So for her, it's like, no, we're not, we're going to keep things as peaceful as possible. So it's like, we're going to be leading a coup, which once again, how does Bellamy feel? You can tell it bothers him at the very end of the episode because it's like, yeah, this is his sister they're talking about. I mean, it might not be as simple as like taking her down because Octavia won't be taken down so easily, just who she is, because she's not about to give up the throne. Plus, there's followers who believe it. So it's going to be interesting. And also, like I said, Clark was willing to do this because it means protecting Maddie, but it might be something she ends up eventually regretting because it's like in the means of trying to protect her, she might inadvertently put her in, well, make things potentially worse. Because that's another thing too. It's like, even when we try to help, when we try to make things better, coming back to Earth, what do? We made things worse, so it's just kind of in this endless cycle. And that's kind of something kind of speaking on them coming, or not just them coming back to Earth, like obviously this season, but also like them coming to Earth in the first place. I did not realize this until like Kane, like the discussion between Charmaine and Kane came up where it's like, oh man, like very similar situations. Cause we end up learning from Shaw, cause Raven's like, why do you serve someone like that? That lady has killed so many people. She blew up so many buildings for people whose like politics she didn't agree with and stuff like that. But it turns out for Shaw, like, he actually was the one that set them free, like their collars, leading to them massacring everyone on the ship, was because they were given orders to leave all the sick people behind. But no matter how hard she is, like Charmaine actually does care about people. It's actually kind of interesting. Like, it kind of reminds me of Negan from The Walking Dead, where it's like, oh, people are a resource. Machines can be replaced, but people can't. So she always pushed for people. And so that's why she's kind of taking care of this, like, crew of criminals for so long, because the group was originally, the orders were to like protocol 11. It's like, hey, you leave them behind and you bring that the lonium that they were getting, the same thing that was making everyone sick, just bring it back, leave all the sick people behind. Shaw didn't agree with that, even though his commander did. So that's why he did. And like all those people that died weren't 100% on Charmaine, because she was doing that to protect them, everyone on that ship. Like for Shaw, for him, it's probably like all that weighs on him. That's why he's kind of like, Charmaine's not as bad as you think, and I'm not as good as you think I am. So, but that kind of got interesting to me because it's like this whole situation where Kane is like, oh, we should get rid of some of these, because obviously not all of them are probably up to Kane's standards, and because some of them are probably ruffians and killers and thugs in his mind. But then she's like, oh yeah, you're talking mad trash about him, but it's like, this coming from the same guy that sent 100 kids down to Earth to die, or 300 prisoners that were meant to die. And it's like, oh man, you are literally in the same situation, aren't you? That's so fascinating. Like, they were both potentially were going to be left behind, and they did what they needed to survive. The 100 did the same thing, and so did the inmates, which is just so interesting to kind of see that parallel between the two groups, that in actuality they have so much in common in that regard. Also was the interesting conversation between Raven and Echo about how things working, like between everyone, like Kane being different and even Echo being like, everyone's different. Like, we don't know what they went through in those 6 years, but they are very different. No one's acting like the same. So, but initially Raven didn't want to kind of like betray Shaw, but Echo does it anyway, which gives them the results they needed. But I mean, unbeknownst to them, they would be in it, because it's just so interesting because things are stacked upon each other. It's because of what they did that would have eventually led to Octavia invading, which will most likely have ended with them getting killed, and most likely a lot of other people too. They might be baddish people, but they don't deserve to die under these circumstances. It's a complicated situation. So inadvertently they did that, but they were going to be helping that. But Clark doing what she's doing makes that no longer a thing. I mean, because that way now that it's not like, oh, we got control of the eyes in the sky, because we have a view of the eye of the sky. That also means because they no longer actually do, they're actually, because eventually they felt like it won't be long before Octavia finds out, but it's like, this way Octavia won't find out because they're keeping it secret, because they're not acting upon that, they're not utilizing it. So, I mean, who's to say eventually they won't, but I feel like this is supposed to kind of head towards making things good between them and Charmaine. So, but sadly, Echo sold Shaw out, and Raven proved that it was in fact Shaw who did block the missiles and stuff like that. which earned him getting beat up and thrown in there with the rest of them, which Raven was hurt by that because it's like, for her, it's like, she didn't want to do that to him. Echo did that, but it's still kind of like, he's the one ally, like, they built something there. Yeah, he's always kind of been self-serving because everything he's done has always been about self-survival and stuff like that, but inadvertently, he has done a lot to make sure that he tried to do the right thing in this situation too, because like he tried to make it so that other people wouldn't die, hence the whole locking the missiles. So it's even something interesting because like Charmaine talked about the fact is him having a conscience, him kind of caring about people isn't actually a bad thing, him having feelings, because if he didn't have feelings, they wouldn't be where they are right now, because he's the reason they got set free in the first place. So, which is interesting because Shaw kind of reminds me of the Kane of the group. I mean, because it seems like even Kane's kind of losing himself and all this stuff. Like, I mean, for him, I think his main focus right now is Abby. He kind of doesn't really, like, if everything else can work out, sure, but I think his main focus is and will continue to be Abby. It's like, as long as she's taken care of, like, he'll do whatever he needs to. You know, for him, it's just like the way Octavia's run things. Like, he's done with her and everything that she represents. So once again, we still have no idea 100. We have an idea what went down, but even then, it's like we don't know what it is exactly, because there's still that year or so, that the dark year that Kane referenced, that Octavia was like, you shut your mouth about that, you know? So then there's the whole Kane and Abby situation. He's calling her out for the fact is that she's still popping pills, even though she promised she would stop. The lady that Echo had brought with them that had gotten shot, it's like, hey, like, Abby wasn't even there. It's like, I tried everything, but it's like, you were high. How can you say that you tried your best? Like, you know, but it's like, no, it did, like, it keeps me functioning, but it's like, no, it also means that you're not at your 100, which is a conversation he has with Charmaine. It's like, take her off the pills. It's like, no, the last thing I need is her to be like a clean junkie who's like, you know, so concerned about getting her next fix that she's not really doing things like she's supposed to. So it's kind of give and take of like, you know, in Charmaine's eyes, it's like, there's no, like, no, I need her at her fullest to heal my people. Apparently, it turns out a shit ton of those people are dying from that. It's like 75% of her people will die from like that, being sick. And like Kane had also brought it up. It's like, I noticed that you didn't get examined. Are you sick too? Is that why you're pushing this? It's like, no, because she wanted Abby to be there. She needed a doctor, not only for them, but mainly for herself, because it turns out she's actually pregnant. That was a twist I wasn't expecting. I was like, do you have something going on in your own that you're hiding? It's like, oh, that's it. And I guess like it makes sense because maybe being pregnant would make her be considered weak because, you know, she's got another life. And, you know, it could be seen as a sign of weakness just because it's like, oh, like she's vulnerable to a degree. Not just the fact is, oh, she'll have a baby and that'd be kind of a weakness that can be used against her, but also because the fact is that it would just mean that, you know, she's taking care of another life, so she won't be as quick and as in a fight in this coming potential war. So it's definitely interesting because I'm sure that's going to be a factor going forward about like Charmaine. Like, I mean, that'd be an extra reason why not to kill her. That might come into play later on. Maybe Octavia will get the opportunity to try and kill her, but then it's like she's pregnant, so what are you going to do? But then Octavia might be like, yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. Or seeing that she's pregnant might be the thing that ends up setting her up to be like, nope, I'm not going to kill Charmaine. Might be a situation where she kills Charmaine and they have to get the baby out before like, you know, maybe there's a little bit of time that they can get the baby out before it's too late. Like I said, it also comes down to how much time kind of flows in between the episodes and before. I mean, it looks like everything's kind of ramping up pretty quickly, and I'm not a good judge of like how far along she is. She looks like she's pretty decent amount of time into the pregnancy, so. I'm also curious to see what that all means for Abby, because definitely her and Kane are in a bad place, because Kane's like, so, is it me or the pills? He's like, let me be there to kind of help you get clean. But she's like, Marcus, I'm so close to curing these people. Choose. And the fact is she never really gave an answer for him. I think it was all he needed to know, like, yep. Which immediately my brain was like, oh, so does that mean that going to turn into like a Charmaine and Kane thing? Even though he loves her and everything, maybe he'll end up leaving Abby. Which is funny because it's like he did all of this was for Abby. But for Abby, it's like, all this happened was because of me. It's her fault that the situation it's come down to this. It's because her being in the state that she's in, because none of this kind of would have really happened if she wasn't kind of, you know, because for her, she blames herself because it's like Kane got into the pit, took fault for something that wasn't his fault, that was her own. So It is a very complicated situation all across the board, and I'm very interested to see like where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. Beyond that as well. I mean, will Octavia, like, she's already got the worms ready, but even without the like, you know, with their eyes in the sky, like, will she still march? She'll still do it anyway, especially now knowing like they can live enough inside of a person, a deserter, long enough that so it also depends too, because like Clark and the others, like their little coup, like, time is of the essence, like everything is going down, and it's going to be interesting to see like who ends up coming out on top in this entire situation. You might even have a situation where we have Maddie kind of inadvertently helping Octavia, actually protecting her while Clark's trying to do what she's trying to do. So we'll see in the end what happens. Oh yeah, and because also let's not forget, it didn't come up this episode at all, but there's the whole Murphy and Imori situation. They have McCreary, so that's kind of a third angle that needs to be kind of talked about as well, like what that's going to all be. So I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good